Era. Starting from Shaanbei Caves Introduction. Reborn, hardcore landing. But what greeted Sun Xiangyang was not the image from memory, but the desolate and barren yellow soil, the well that could not be dug, and the belly that could not be filled. The only consolation may be that the proud and beautiful educated youth daughter.in.law is willing to accompany him. So, Sun Xiangyang, who had obtained the system, decided to dig a well first. Who said, on this barren loess ground, it is impossible to erect the brightest pearl. P1. System article, field flow, construction article. P2. This book is also known as Starting with a Village and Developing a City, and Era. Starting from Gamification of Life. Chapter 1. Splashing and Rolling. You are listening at novel full.audio. It's all you who killed my man and also killed my son. I'll fight with you. Hold her down for me. Sun Xiangyang was awakened by a loud noise. In a daze, he was still thinking, who is so ungrateful, arguing early in the morning and not letting anyone sleep. He sat up angrily from the hardened bed. Fake a corpse. At this moment, a sharper sound exploded beside his ear, startling Sun Xiangyang and completely dispelling the remaining drowsiness. Then he was dumbfounded. Who am I? Where am I? No, didn't he get hit by a car? In theory, he should be in the hospital, how can he lie on the ground? And there are also some strange people around. Judging from the attire, it looks a bit like it was in the 1970s. Before he could figure it out, a surge of memories rushed into his head, almost causing him to crash. Sun Xiangyang, a person with the same name and surname as him, was born in a remote small rural area in northern Shaanxi. His father died 6 months ago to save 3 fallen educated youth. My mother retaliated by blackmail several times, and forced the rescued female educated youth to marry him. And this Sun Xiangyang, from a young age, secretly learned some feng shui from his father and became addicted to it. Just a few days ago, the only well in the village that had a draft suddenly dried up. And this well happened to be found by his father for the village before. So the old secretary came to his door, hoping that he could help take a look and find a way. Unexpectedly, as soon as the original owner went down, a part of the well collapsed inexplicably, burying the original owner. After everyone finally dug out the original owner, they were already out of breath. Then the scene before us happened. That is to say, he has traveled through time. Just as Sun Xiangyang was stunned, a figure rushed up to him and poked a dirty finger at his mouth. He instinctively avoided it. It's not a fake corpse, it's really alive. I should have just breathed a sigh of relief just now. The old branch secretary, who withdrew his fingers resentfully, suppressed the chaos around him with a deep voice. My son, why are you so unlucky? Then, another figure came to his side, crouching on the ground, starting to cry and howl at the top of his throat, causing Sun Xiangyang to have a black line in his mind. What's the howl? Xiangyang just woke up. Do you want him to close his breath again? The old secretary has spoken again. The crying and howling came to an abrupt end. Xiangyang, how are you doing? Do you feel any discomfort? Do you want to go to the health clinic to see if you're feeling well? The old secretary's face, full of wrinkles and dark vicissitudes, leaned closer and looked at Sun Xiangyang with concern. I'm fine, I don't need to go to the hospital. Sun Xiangyang shook his head, his mind still feeling a bit confused at the moment. He just wanted to find a quiet place to sort out those messy memories. Xiangyang's mother, take your child home to rest first, and we'll see about the situation with the well in a couple of days. What else are you looking at? My son almost died. In my opinion, this well is ominous. Hurry up and fill it in. Speaking of this, Zhang Hohot became angry. She had already said not to touch this harmful thing, but unfortunately, her son is also a restless person, just like his father who died pretending to be stubborn. What nonsense! Fill the well, where will the whole village go to get water? The old secretary's eyes widened. Eat wherever you like, it's not related to my family anyway. Don't come to my son for this kind of thing in the future. He's so young, he can understand shit, and my family still needs to live a good life in the future. Zhang Hohot never sticks to the old branch secretary. Mom, let's go home first. My head is still a bit dizzy. Sun Xiangyang said softly. According to the original owner's memory, in earlier years, his mother was not like this. She was friendly and helpful to everyone. Until his father was reported for engaging in feudal superstition, he suddenly collapsed. So, his mother stood up and became a shrew, struggling to create a world for him and his grandfather. Therefore, others can be dissatisfied with Zhang Hohot's behavior, but the original owner cannot. Unfortunately, the original owner didn't understand this before and often felt embarrassed, which made his mother cry at night. Hey, let's go back now. Chen shooting, why don't you come over and help your man go home? Zhang Hohot was stunned for a moment, then quickly nodded and said to a woman next to her with messy hair and red eyes. Sun Xiangyang's gaze involuntarily turned towards him. This woman is his current daughter.In.Law, an educated youth from a big city, with an indescribable appearance. It's hard to find even 8 villages within 10 miles with lanterns. She just seemed a bit embarrassed this time. Chen shooting lowered her head and squatted down next to Sun Xiangyang without saying a word. She carefully helped him up and walked through the crowd watching the commotion, heading towards home. Sun Xiangyang opened his mouth, but due to his mother still following behind, he didn't say anything in the end. The relationship between mother.In.Law and daughter.In.Law has always been a difficult problem to solve since ancient times. And memories of this woman occasionally pop out of his mind. It can be said with certainty that Chen shooting is a good wife, but at the same time, she is also a very proud woman. This may be closely related to her background. Although she agreed to marry Sun Xiangyang because of his mother's extortion and guilt, she took on her own responsibility since they got married and wholeheartedly wanted to live a good life with Sun Xiangyang. The biggest contradiction between this mother.In.Law and daughter.In.Law is that they have been married for half a year, and Chen shooting's belly has not yet moved. This made Zhang Hohot very dissatisfied, thinking that it was Chen shooting who was unwilling to accept and look down on her son, and was unwilling to pass on the family line to her. But in reality, although the two have been married for 6 months, they have not yet reconciled. It's not that Chen shooting is unwilling, but rather that the original owner didn't know which ancient book to read a passage from and went to Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com to say that feng shui masters have 5 drawbacks and 3 shortcomings. The original owner firmly believes in this. Because his parents had a son and a daughter before him, all of whom died prematurely. When he was young, his health was also not good, and he was often sick. He was just a medicine jar, and now he is far inferior to ordinary people. And his family used to be a wealthy family, but a few years ago, they were defeated all of a sudden. So he never wanted to sleep with Chen shooting. If we put it bluntly, Zhang Hohot may not have such a big opinion of Chen shooting yet, but unfortunately, this woman is a proud person, or perhaps she finds it difficult to speak up. After all, this is an era of shyness to talk about sex. The original owner, who was completely focused on revitalizing the family, was almost stunned. He ignored the family's affairs or had a bit of an evasive mentality, and did not actively explain to Chen shooting. Chen shooting's pride and silence, as well as the original owner's inaction, led to the intensification of the conflict between her mother.In.Law and daughter.In.Law. However, in Sun Xiangyang's opinion, these are not a big deal. When he comes back, he will take the initiative to be honest, admit his mistake, and by the way, he will give birth to a chubby boy next year. His biggest problem now is still what happened to him. Why did he just cross over? Moreover, as he walked towards home, he felt a bit dizzy and his head swelled up, as if something was about to run out. There won't be any sequelae left, will there? Sun Xiangyang thought in a daze. When he returned home and entered the room, he was supported by Chen shooting to lie on the Kong, but he could no longer hold on. He reluctantly left a sentence. He will sleep for a while, and then he completely fell into darkness, and his consciousness seemed to be sucked in by everything. Vaguely, he seemed to hear someone call him Dad, but he didn't know if it was an illusion. Chapter 2. A Game. You are listening at novel full.audio. When Sun Xiangyang woke up again, it was already pitch black outside, and an oil lamp was lit inside the room, barely illuminating a few meters around. He sat cross-legged on the Kong, his clothes had been changed, and his dirty and muddy body had been wiped away. In front of him, there was a small square table with specially prepared food for him. A large bowl of millet porridge, 2 eggs, a plate of pickled black radish strips, and 2 solid wawatu. Across from him sat a 4 or 5-year-old girl with 2 braids tied in her hair, looking timid and occasionally swallowing saliva while looking at the eggs in the bowl. Seeing this scene, Sun Xiangyang picked up an egg and peeled it off, handing it to the little girl. Here. The little girl in front of me is called Dudu, who has just turned 5 years old. Half a year ago, Sun's father died to save 3 fallen educated youth. At that time, Chen shooting was the first to be rescued because she was close to the reservoir. Later, Sun Fu went to save the distant educated youth couple, and in the end, all 3 of them died. Dudu is the daughter left by the educated youth couple. At first, Chen shooting agreed to marry Sun Xiangyang, and her only request was to marry along with Dudu and raise her as her own daughter. So the sound of Dad that Sun Xiangyang heard before falling into a coma during the day was not an illusion. I won't eat it. Mom said she wants to leave the eggs for Dad to nourish his body. Dudu's face was full of confusion, but in the end, she shook her head firmly. Sun Xiangyang had also experienced this kind of obedience in his previous life. Even Dudu's situation was similar to his previous life, so he felt particularly sorry for his daughter whom he had met for the first time. So, Dad doesn't like egg yolk, so he only eats egg white. Can you help Dad eat the egg yolk? Sun Xiangyang broke open the eggs, ate the egg whites himself, and gave the remaining egg yolks to the little girl's mouth. Perhaps it was the enticing aroma of egg yolk, or perhaps it was Sun Xiangyang's completely different strength from before that made the little girl instinctively open her mouth. She first carefully bit a bit, then her eyes widened, and then took the egg yolk and swallowed it in a big gulp. Thank you. Sob. Dad. You received sincere thanks from villager Feng Dudu, experience +10. What? Sun Xiangyang's eyes suddenly widened. What's going on? Have you experienced hallucinations? Although he woke up feeling like he had something on him, he couldn't see or touch it, let alone speak clearly. I didn't expect to jump out on my own. Is it related to feeding? He decided to continue trying. Slow down, don't choke. Sun Xiangyang said as he peeled off the remaining egg. But this time, he ate the egg yolk and instead presented the egg white to the little girl. At this moment, the little girl's head was still a bit confused. Didn't Dad just say he doesn't like egg yolks? Just before her little head could think it through, her mouth involuntarily opened. When Chen shooting came in, she saw such a scene. Mom, it's my dad who said he doesn't like egg yolks and asked me to help him eat them. Dudu was startled and gave a somewhat guilty explanation. Chen shooting looked at the egg white on the little girl's lips and didn't say anything. Just the gaze fell on Sun Xiangyang, a bit strange. Regarding this, Sun Xiangyang did not explain or say anything to Chen shooting. Instead, he picked up a steamed bun and took a big bite, pondering in his heart. Just had the second feeding, I don't know if it was interrupted by Chen shooting, but I didn't receive any feedback. The only thing he can be certain of is that the prompt that appeared inexplicably in his mind in written form before was not an illusion. System. Or something else. Later, Sun Xiangyang tried to share wawatu and millet porridge with Dudu, but he still didn't get any experience, which made him puzzled. After eating and drinking enough, Sun Xiangyang leaned against the blanket like an old man and began to daydream. At least on the surface. Thinking of the previous prompt, his heart moved. Isn't experience something that only appears in games? He couldn't help but try to shout in his heart, panel. At the next moment, Sun Xiangyang widened his eyes again. Because in front of him, there indeed appeared an illusory panel, touched by hand, but it was empty. Dudu, who was playing next to him, didn't notice anything, obviously only Sun Xiangyang could see it himself. Then he carefully stared at the words that appeared on the panel. Name. Sun Xiangyang identity. Villager level. 0, 0 out of 100, remaining experience. 10 skill. None comment. You are just a penniless white soldier. Game description. 1. This game has been anchored, with an initial coverage range of Shaanxi. 2. All game rules are to be explored by players themselves. So, is this a game? But if it's a game, it's too realistic. The memories of 2 lifetimes are like movie scenes, passing through my mind frame by frame. There is no trace of falsehood in what one sees, knows, or feels. After a moment of contemplation, he still tended to travel back to this era and replace it with the original owner, but with an additional gamified golden finger. Shaking his head vigorously, he found that the illusory panel had not disappeared. Sun Xiangyang tentatively said something in his heart and withdrew it. Suddenly, the panel disappeared and everything seemed to be no different from before. But Sun Xiangyang understood. It's different. Subsequently, he tried several more times and ultimately focused on the remaining experience column, looking at the lonely 10 points of experience and choosing to add them. The handwriting on the panel changes accordingly. Name. Sun Xiangyang identity. Villager level. 0, 10 out of 100, remaining experience. 0 skill. None comment. Although you have found a way, you are still a useless person with nothing. Just adding 10 points of experience did not increase the level, but I don't know if it's an illusion. Sun Xiangyang felt like there was a warm current spreading in his body, as if soaking in a hot spring, warm, and even the previous exhaustion was swept away. So, upgrading equals enhancing physical fitness. What would happen if you were to be promoted to level 100? Due to not having enough experience to give him a try, Sun Xiangyang quickly shifted his focus and began to contemplate the current situation. At present, it is October in the Gregorian calendar of 77 years, located in a place called Shaanxi in Yulin, northern Shaanxi. There are only 300 people in the village, and it is more than 20 kilometers away from the nearest county town. I also live in a cave. For a moment, Sun Xiangyang thought he had traveled into the ordinary world of TV dramas. But upon closer inspection of the original owner's memory, it was discovered that there was neither Sun Xiaoan, who used the phrase, "I really want to kill you," as a catchphrase, nor anyone named Shilian. Everything appears to be specious. The only similarity is backwardness and poverty. The village has not yet been electrified, and every household can only light oil lamps. Although the village is called Shaanxi, in reality, the loess plateau has always been short of water, and the nearest reservoir to the village is located 4 or 5 miles away, still in a small mountain ditch. Although there is a clear small pond upstream of the reservoir in the mountain ditch, which can barely supply the entire village with water, the distance is far and the road is difficult to walk. Basically, picking a load of water back takes 1 or 2 hours, which is a serious waste of time. At present, autumn is fine. If winter arrives and the road freezes, it will be unbearable every day. At present, although he has an additional game panel, he needs to explore everything on his own and cannot directly provide him with food and water. He also has to rely on himself. As for leaving this poor and backward small village, he has not yet considered it. Leaving aside the fact that he has nowhere to go, just the coordinate anchoring mentioned in the previous game description, which only covers Shaanxi, and the prompt from villager phone Dudu, all indicate that this game panel can only be used in Shaanxi. At least for now, that's the case. Even if he hasn't figured out more uses yet, just improving his physique is enough to make him rooted and persevere. If you want to make money, it's not too late to wait a few more years. Thinking about it this way, it's quite good. Now his wife and children are heating up the Kong, which can be considered as the ultimate dream of their previous life. In his previous life, he also came from a small mountain village. His parents passed away early and he was adopted by his uncle's family. Although Auntie has a harsh tongue, she doesn't miss anything short of him. I remember when he was admitted to college, my aunt went back to her mother's house. When she came back, her eyes were red, but she gave him the tuition fee. So for his uncle's family, he always harbors gratitude. After graduation, he worked alone in the big city, in his 30s, but he had not yet started a family. My girlfriend had a conversation, but the house was a dam in front of him. Not willing to burden his uncle's family, he could only work a few jobs on his own and barely scrape together enough for the down payment. But after waiting for 2 years, the developer went bankrupt and the house was abandoned. My girlfriend is also well behaved and sensible. When I found out from Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com, I didn't blame him. Instead, I found a coffee shop with a petty bourgeois style and had a heartfelt conversation with him. After receiving a good person card, the other person comforted him and said that he would definitely find someone better than her in the future. There is no resentment, just a heart full of exhaustion. The last memory is that when he left the coffee shop and crossed the road in a daze, a red sports car ran a red light and lost control, knocking him away. I don't know if the good guy card is effective, but the soul unexpectedly came to this era and completely replaced the original owner with the same name and surname. The key is to have a beautiful daughter.in.law and a well-behaved and lovely daughter. My ex-girlfriend's words can also be considered a prophecy. If there is any regret in my previous life, it is that I did not have a chance to repay my uncle's family's nurturing kindness. Fortunately, after his death, the guy driving the sports car will also compensate a large amount of money, which can be considered a slight compensation. As for this life, once it comes, be content with it. Go to sleep. I don't know how long it took, but Chen Shooting finished tidying up and climbed onto the con. Her originally plump blue coarse cloth pants were suddenly stretched out into a round shape. Wait. Suddenly, Sun Xiangyang let out a cry and faced Chen Shooting's puzzled gaze. Without explanation, he got out of bed, went outside to fetch a basin of water, and then brought it back to the room. Dudu, wash your feet before going to bed. You can also wash them by the way. Sun Xiangyang looked at Chen Shooting with some anticipation. Getting foot wash for my wife is the head of the family, is it something that the men in northern Shaanxi can do? His attitude is so low, if Chen Shooting doesn't give him 180 points of experience, it's heartless. However, in the face of his expectant gaze, Chen Shooting's face showed a shy and angry expression. Chapter 3. Recognition of the Old Branch Secretary. You are listening at novel full.audio. Wearing shoes and walking all day, most people deeply appreciate the smell at night. In this situation, even the most beautiful woman's feet are not fragrant. Chen Shooting is a young educated person from a big city who loves cleanliness. She used to go to bed at night and wash herself up. However, since the well in the village dried up, it was inconvenient to fetch water. In the afternoon, she helped Sun Xiangyang clean her body, wash clothes, and cook at night, resulting in very little water left in the water tank. The remaining bit will need to be used tomorrow morning. Because of this, Chen Shooting did not wash her feet today and emitted some odor. But what she didn't expect was that Sun Xiangyang actually despised her foot odor. For Chen Shooting, who was married but still a yellow flower girl, she felt ashamed and angry, wishing she could find a way to sneak in. And Sun Xiangyang finally reacted to the other person's expression and the smell he smelled when he got closer. Cough, Doodle, come over quickly and wash your feet to sleep. After speaking, Sun Xiangyang didn't look at Chen Shooting's face anymore and climbed straight onto the Kong. And with a beep, he obediently climbed down and sat on the small stool, washing his feet seriously. After she finished washing, Chen Shooting carried water and went outside. It wasn't until Sun Xiangyang was almost asleep that she quietly entered. The plan to extract wool from Chen Shooting naturally failed, but Dudu contributed 5 experience points to him. How else can we say that our daughter is the intimate little cotton jacket of our parents? The next day, the sun had already risen very high. Under Sun Xiangyang's buttocks was a wooden stake, with his back against the earthen wall, allowing himself to bask in the sunlight. In October of northern Shaanxi, even during the day, the temperature has dropped to around 10 degrees. His current home was dug out on a hillside, with a total of 3 holes, equivalent to 3 rooms. The cave dwellings are located at the high point of the village. Standing in his courtyard without walls, looking down, there are uneven cave dwellings connected by a winding path. Neighbors are generally separated by 30 to 40 meters. In some of the terraced fields cultivated on the hillside further away, small figures can be vaguely seen busy. At this moment, Dudu was playing with glass beads in the yard. This was her most precious toy, which she had to hide under her pillow every day while sleeping. But at this moment, she appeared somewhat absent-minded, occasionally stealing a glance at Sun Xiangyang beside her with her big black and white eyes. Even if the child doesn't understand much and is relatively simple, she can clearly feel that this father is different from before. I don't know why, but she felt a little happy in her heart. At this moment, a figure with hands in hand and a worried face rushed into the yard. Old branch secretary Grandpa. Dudu quickly got up from the ground and obediently called out. Hey, Dudu, Grandpa will give you candy to eat. The old secretary took out a piece of candy from her pocket, which instantly brightened Dudu's eyes. However, she did not immediately take it, but turned her head to look at Sun Xiangyang. Since it was given by Grandpa Lao Jishu, you can take it. Sun Xiangyang also stood up and said. Thank you, Grandpa, the old branch secretary. Dudu finally took the candy, but he didn't want to eat it. Instead, he placed it under his nose and sniffed it hard. Xiangyang, are you feeling better? The old secretary looked at Sun Xiangyang and said in a warm voice. A lot better, how did you come over? Sun Xiangyang knew it well and asked. Isn't that well causing trouble? This morning, Sun Qingshan's wife went to the mountain ditch to fetch water, accidentally rolled down, and ended up breaking her leg. The old secretary sighed and the wrinkles on his face suddenly deepened. That's quite serious. Did you go to the hospital? Sun Xiangyang asked with concern. I found a few people and sent them to the community health center, but this is not a solution. Everyone is quite busy, and just picking water every day wastes a lot of time. If anyone is not careful, they will still suffer. That's the truth. I heard there's a drilling team in the community, isn't there? You didn't ask. Why didn't you go? But the task of the drilling team in the community has been scheduled for winter, and no one will allow it, so I can only come and beg you. Old branch secretary, please don't say that. Although I also want to help the village, you saw yesterday that I had a conflict with that well and almost died. And when I came back yesterday, my mother said that if I dare to touch those feudal superstitious things again, I will break my legs. So I'm not planning to learn those things again in the future, they're all fake and deceiving. We need to believe in science. Sun Xiangyang's face was full of difficulties. Upon hearing his words, the old secretary simply rolled his eyes. On your mother's side, I'll go talk to her later. I know she's still resenting that incident back then. In fact, after knowing that guy went to report your father in the community, I wish I could have shot him. It's still your dad who grabbed me and said he had long anticipated such a disaster. As for whether those things are deceiving or not, I know better than you. Later on, I secretly saw your father running around the ancestral tomb of that family twice, and within half a year, the family began to suffer. The guy who reported your father died of an urgent illness. The rest of his family were also frightened and moved out overnight, saying they were going to seek refuge with relatives, but now they have lost their trust. From then on, who else do you see dare to report your father? Is there another one like this? Sun Xiangyang was stunned when he heard it. If it weren't for the other person's confident appearance and recalling the ending of the family in his mind, he would even think that the other person was making up a story. But why did his father collapse completely from then on, as if he had lost his energy and spirit? Now that Sun Xiangyang is 21 years old, when that incident happened, he was only in his teens, so his memory is also somewhat blurred. Is it difficult? Later, something else happened. As for whether you have obtained your father's true biography, can you deceive others, and can you also deceive my old eyes? The old secretary said arrogantly. What do you mean by old man? Sun Xiangyang asked cautiously. Is it difficult for his secret to be discovered? When you were first dug out yesterday, I personally checked and not only did you lose breath, but you couldn't even touch your pulse. But after half an hour, you came back alive again. If you didn't have the real ability, could you do it? If I'm not mistaken, are you relying on turtle breathing to feign death in order to come back to life? The old secretary suddenly lowered his voice and said mysteriously. It's Sun Xiangyang's turn to roll his eyes this time. He couldn't tell the truth from the previous story, but this time, he knew that the original owner had really died. If it weren't for his soul traveling through and occupying the magpie's nest, the original owner might have been buried. Fake death with turtle breath. Why didn't Yan Wangye release him after seeing that his lifespan was not over? Don't worry, I know this matter and I promise not to say anything, but you need to help find another well in the village. The old secretary thought he had discovered Sun Xiangyang's secret and took the opportunity to blackmail him. Old secretary, you must have read the book Garden www.zhaoshuyuan.com wrong yesterday. I was just unconscious, as I told you, I had to close my breath before I could wake up. Moreover, if I really know how to fake death, then my father will definitely do the same. If that's the case, how could he drown? Sun Xiangyang pulled out his deceased father to defend himself. Your father is different. He broke his rules and ruined the feng shui of that family, so he was also ruined. He lost 99% of his abilities. Otherwise, a reservoir could drown your father. Breaking the martial arts. Did my father tell you? Do you need your father to tell me this? It's obvious that I'm not blind with these eyes. The old secretary smiled confidently. Before Sun Xiangyang could say anything more, the old secretary continued, also, as long as you help the village find a new well, I will return to you the magic tools and some books that your father left with me back then. My dad still left something with you. How come I don't know? Sun Xiangyang exclaimed in shock. After your father broke his martial arts, his body deteriorated day by day. To be on the safe side, he specially sent his magical tools and your lineage of books to my place for me to help preserve. At that time, he even lied to me that you were not that material. If you saw these things at home, they would eventually cause trouble. He asked me to help preserve it until we find a true heir in the future. I originally believed it to be true, and coupled with your recent years of concealment, I didn't care about you. It wasn't until the well in the village suddenly dried up this time that I thought of being a dead horse and a living horse doctor, asking you to take a look, that I truly realized how deep your kid was hiding. I see you have already surpassed your father. The old secretary spoke with sincerity and admiration on his face. You have received recognition from the old branch secretary Sun Yuda, with an experience of +20. Chapter 4. On which company is strong in wool harvesting? You are listening at novel full.audio. Listening to the prompts from the system, Sun Xiangyang was instantly refreshed. In that case, he won't be tired anymore. At the same time, he also noticed that the system prompt this time was different from last night. Last night he received Dudu's sincere gratitude, and this time he received the sincere recognition of the old branch secretary. So, in fact, it's not just by expressing gratitude to him that he can gain experience. Since approval is also possible, can emotions such as love, fear, and resentment from the heart also bring him experience? The entire Shaanxi Bay has about 300 people this deal, done. Old secretary, look at what you're saying, at least I'm also a part of Shaanxi. Even if you don't say anything about this, I will definitely do my best. Sun Xiangyang patted his chest and confidently said. Really, the old secretary's face was full of suspicion. Didn't he just keep evading? How did it change so quickly? Did he get the handle on it? Of course it's true. Even if we don't care about the village, my family still has to eat water, right? There's no well in this village, it's really inconvenient. Sun Xiangyang couldn't help but think of Chen shooting going to fetch water early this morning. Perhaps it was because of the incident last night that the other party was a bit unwilling to talk to him. He wanted to help but was also rejected. Okay, if you think this way, I can rest assured. I know you don't want to be known about your abilities, so when it's night, we'll go secretly to find water. By the way, I brought you a sample tool specifically this time. Take a look first. The old secretary was filled with joy. Sun Xiangyang's eyes suddenly widened. Are you really playing? Then, under his strange gaze, the old secretary pulled out a metal object about 30 centimeters each from his two sleeves, with a grip. Listening to the sound of collisions and the color, it should be copper. The dragon-searching ruler. Sun Xiangyang said in surprise. Look, I know you know this thing. Originally, according to your father's wishes, this magical tool could not be given to you, but I also know that his original intention was only to protect you. Now that your father has left, the well in the village has suddenly been taken down. I think this should be a warning given by your father's spirit in heaven, asking me to give you the thing and find a new well for the village to drink water. Xiangyang, you're not too young now. You've already started a family and it's time to take on your father's responsibilities. Besides, you don't want your father's spirit in heaven to be uneasy, do you? The old secretary spoke with great care and dedication. Old branch secretary, since you have a dragon-searching ruler, why don't you go find the water yourself? Sun Xiangyang did not argue with the other party about his father's spirit in heaven, mainly because he occupied the body of his son, which inevitably made him feel a bit guilty. And the reason why he knew the dragon seeker was not because of the memories left by the original owner, but because he had seen it with his own eyes in his previous life. At that time, the village was also going to dig a well, so they went to find a master. The master held something similar to this in his hand, held it flat with both hands, and walked and stopped at the place where the well was dug, muttering incessantly until the two sticks were pushed together by a mysterious force. The master shouted loudly and stomped the ground with force, looking like an expert. If you fight here, you can definitely get water out. And the result is that if water is really produced, it is still a well with abundant water. At that time, he was amazed by heaven and earth. Even though Sun Xiangyang graduated from university and returned to his hometown, many people in the village had dried up their own wells, but the well continued to flow out. Do you think I didn't go? To be honest, I secretly tried this thing last night, but it didn't listen to me at all. I guess only you feng shui masters can use it. The old secretary had seen Sun Xiangyang's father use this thing before and learned it 10 times, but last night he walked through most of the village without any reaction. Helpless, he could only come and confront Sun Xiangyang. As for Sun's instructions, if everyone dies, is it still up to him to make the decision? Okay, but my body is still a bit weak. Please let me take care of it for 2 days first. When it's ready, I'll accompany you on a walk. But let's talk about it first. If I can't find water, you can't be impatient. Sun Xiangyang had to get vaccinated first. As for how to find water, he has some ideas. The key still depends on whether the system is awesome. Don't worry, if you can't find water, it's not your problem either. The old secretary casually perfunctory. In his view, Sun Xiangyang, who had already emerged from the blue and surpassed the blue, would definitely find water. The other party was nothing more than humility. So, the old secretary left with satisfaction. After he left, Sun Xiangyang walked around the yard with a dragon-searching ruler in his hand, pretending to be too tight. He didn't know if his grip was too tight, so he didn't react at all. In the end, he could only sigh that he wasn't made of that piece of material, so he threw it aside. It seems that we still need to rely on the system. Thinking to himself, Sun Xiangyang summoned the panel. Name: Sun Xiangyang. Identity: villager. Level: 0, 10 out of 100, remaining experience: 25. Skill: none. Comment: you seem to have made a new discovery. At this point, in the remaining experience column, there are 25 experience points lying quietly, of which 5 points are from last night's thanks to him for using foot wash. Chen shooting did not even give him any experience. And the other 20 points come from the recognition of the old branch secretary just now. Do you want to add it? Sun Xiangyang thought for a moment and decided to postpone it. He only has 25 experience points, and even if he adds them all, his level cannot be raised to level 1. It's better to keep the experience for now and see if it has any other uses. After all, there is still a skill bar below him, but currently it shows none. System: I need to drill a well that can supply the entire village with water. No response. Big brother, come to a well. Still no response. After pondering for a moment, Sun Xiangyang tentatively said again, consume experience points and find the location of the water well. What? This time, although he still didn't give him any feedback, Sun Xiangyang had a vague feeling that he should have found the right method. The reason for not responding was probably because he didn't have enough experience. In the previous game instructions, it was suggested that all game rules should be explored by the player themselves. This also means that his path has widened. Sun Xiangyang first felt happy, and then his expression drooped. These 25 points of experience, he finally got them, but the result is far from enough. How much does that need? 50. Or 100? If he has so much experience, wouldn't it be good to upgrade directly? Not right. Upgrading is just a one-time deal, but if you can really find a well, wouldn't it be possible to gain more experience points? Thinking about it this way, it seems that it is not a loss, and may even make a big profit. And the top priority is to find a way to collect sheep. Experience. Dudu, come here. Dad. Dudu immediately ran over. Just now, did the old secretary's grandfather give you a piece of candy? Dudu nodded, somewhat unsure, so didn't her dad just ask her to take it? Does Dad want to eat? Thinking of this, although Dudu was full of reluctance, he gritted his teeth and took it out. Dad, here you go. Dad doesn't eat it, this is what Grandpa Lao Jishu gave you. However, Grandpa Lao Jishu gave Dudu candy just to ask for his help. Shouldn't Dudu also thank Dad well? Sun Xiangyang's expression was like a big bad wolf deceiving Little Red Riding Hood. Thank you, Dad. Dudu immediately nodded vigorously, his small face full of sincerity. You received sincere thanks from villager Feng Dudu, experience plus 10. Chapter 5. White-Eyed Wolf. You are listening at novel full.audio. At around noon, Zhang Hohat and Chen Shooting returned one after another carrying agricultural tools. But the former has a drooping face, with a look of not getting close to strangers. Did mother.in.law and daughter.in.law have another conflict? Sun Xiangyang couldn't help but mutter in his heart. It seems that we need to be honest as soon as possible. Otherwise, doing this every day would not be conducive to family harmony. Last night, although he slept on the same Kong as Chen Shooting, there was a little guy in between. The two of them slept on the same bed, and he was the only one. Perhaps due to being accustomed to Sun Xiangyang's indifference, Chen Shooting did not ask for his opinion at all and remained the same as before. And Sun Xiangyang did not act rashly because he had just crossed over. The couple are still strangers in bed. Just waiting for Sun Xiangyang to confess voluntarily, Zhang Hohat began to complain. One by one, they are all white-eyed wolves, occupying our cave dwelling and still chewing on their tongues behind their backs. If it weren't for your wife pulling me, I would have had to tear her mouth apart today. What happened? Sun Xiangyang was a bit confused when he heard it. White-eyed wolf, occupying the cave. It doesn't sound like there was a conflict between mother.in.law and daughter.in.law, but rather someone chewing on their tongue and being overheard by Zhang Hohat. However, these words also awakened some other fragmented memories of him. The original owner was born in 56 years ago and has been living in these 3 cave dwellings since memory began. But occasionally listening to some idle talk in the village, as well as the conversations of his parents, still made him understand that his family used to be quite wealthy, and the cave dwellings he lived in, regardless of location or scale, were the best in the village. After all, his father is a feng shui master, and ordinary families cannot cultivate such talents. Later, due to some unexpected events, the whole family moved to these 3 cave dwellings. And his original cave dwellings, under the allocation of the community work group, were given to several households who had previously fled. What Zhang Hohat said about occupying the kiln cave should be referring to that side. According to the remaining memories of the original owner, there are now 4 households over there. One family consists of 2 generations of widows with 3 children, one is 2 single brothers without parents, one is a lame old man, and the other is a couple of old professors who were sent down a few years ago. When it comes to chewing the tongue, it should be from those 2 generations of widows. Especially the old one, he looks like a formidable character. Isn't it that the old devout woman who has been haunted by maggots and occupied our cave dwelling not only ungrateful, but also constantly speaks ill of our family behind our backs, saying that the well did something because we offended the king of Jing Dragon. So when you went down, the well collapsed. She didn't even think about it. If it weren't for the well that your father found, where would she have gone to drink water? What's going on? When drinking water, don't think about our family's good, but instead blame our family when the well dries up. At this moment, Zhang Hohat's face was still full of indignation and grievances. Mother, don't be angry either. This kind of petty person is fearless of authority and not of virtue. When there's a chance, I'll help you deal with her. Sun Xiangyang comforted. Are you going to clean her up? Can you smash her glass or beat up her kids? Zhang Hohat said angrily. What virtues does she not know about her own son? If there were any achievements, it wouldn't be impossible for even a daughter.in.law to surrender. Usually, I feel like a wooden person. I don't know when I will be able to open my mind. Grandma, give you candy to eat, you're not angry anymore. At this moment, Dudu approached Zhang Hohat and took out the piece of candy that he had never been willing to eat from his pocket. Okay, Grandma is not angry, just be obedient. Although Zhang Hohat is not satisfied with Chen Shooting, she is still quite good at Dudu. I didn't hate this poor little girl just because my own man sacrificed himself to save Dudu's parents. Her spiciness is more focused on the outside. Dudu, tell Grandma, where did you get the sugar? Suddenly, Zhang Hohat seemed to have thought of something and couldn't help but ask. It was given to me by the old secretary's grandfather, I don't want it. Dad asked me to take it. Dudu answered in detail. Why did the old secretary come to our house again? Son, I'll tell you, if he asks you to go see the well again, you can't agree. Don't say you don't know how to read, even if you do, you can't help. Zhang Hohat immediately thought of the key to the problem. Grandpa Lao Zhishu told his father to steal it at night. Dudu said crisply beside him. Zhang Hohat's gaze suddenly became sharp. Don't go, do you hear me? Otherwise, I'll break your leg. Okay, I won't go, but our family also needs to eat water. In the future, I'll go to the pond to fetch water. Sun Xiangyang nodded and could only compromise temporarily in the face of his mother's critical strike. Zhang Hohat looked at him in surprise. Did you take the wrong medicine? Do you still know that you feel sorry for your wife? She couldn't help but look at Chen Shooting beside her. I'll just go fetch water. Chen Shooting smoothed her hair that was draped over her ear, her eyelids twitching. She has been married for half a year, and how could she not know what her own man looks like? Due to poor physical conditions since childhood, I have hardly ever done any heavy work. I usually stay at home studying feng shui and geomancy. When Sun Fu was alive, there was also an old branch secretary secretly taking care of him, and the production team turned a blind eye to him. It seems that he was not the one. Anyway, I don't have to work, I don't have any job responsibilities, and I don't have to share the collective food. After all, Sun Xiangyang can't be considered a member of the 5 guarantees household and is not in the care group. And since she came to Shaanxi to cut in the queue, she would rather rely on herself than on others. After several years of training, she has become like carrying water or doing farm work in the field. So she didn't expect Sun Xiangyang to help her with any work at all. Moreover, she didn't think Sun Xiangyang could bring the water back. If he wants to fetch water, let him go. Why stop him? It also saves him from tinkering with those harmful things at home every day. Zhang Hohat's mouth deflated. If Chen Shooting had taken the initiative to ask Sun Xiangyang to fetch water, she would definitely not have said so. But Chen Shooting didn't want to, so she said something. In short, on such small matters, the opinions of the mother.in.law and daughter.in.law are destined to not be unified. Upon hearing her mother.in.law's words, Chen Shooting didn't say anything more. If Sun Xiangyang can't bear this hardship, she will go fetch water. At noon, the family steamed wawatu and cooked a pot of millet porridge. The only dish was pickled radish and pickled vegetables. Xiaomi was the grain that was just distributed last month, and our family is relatively wealthy. But it was precisely because Sun Xiangyang fell into a coma yesterday that Zhang Hohat was worried about his health, so she only cooked for 2 more days. Normally, she wouldn't be so naughty. As for the eggs, there will be no trace of them. Although it has been 77 years, many people in the city can eat white flour mantou and look for the bookstore www.zhaoshuyuan.com. For the vast poor rural areas, it is still an extravagant thing to fill their stomachs. Like the educated youth who cut in line, according to regulations, their monthly rations should not be less than 35 pounds. Some production teams in affluent areas may be able to offer 45 pounds, but Shaanxi is already short of water and land, so it can only be executed according to the minimum standard. Similarly, the food that members of the production team here can receive is also limited. And Sun Xiangyang's family, because he doesn't do production himself, just eats plain rice. With the sacrifice of his grandson's father in saving others, even if there was an additional Chen Shooting in the family, it was only barely enough to make a living. So there is another important issue before Sun Xiangyang, which is food. How about not mentioning the original owner for now? Anyway, he cannot stay at home and eat plain rice with peace of mind. Moreover, the feeling of hunger is not very comfortable. We still need to find ways to improve the living conditions at home. Especially with winter approaching, families without food can only tighten their belts and endure. This is not acceptable. But the question is, how can he get the food quickly and without suspicion now? After all, his system game cannot directly provide him with these physical objects. The key is to rely on oneself. How about taking advantage of drilling a well and borrowing some from the production team? After finishing their meal and taking a short rest, Zhang Hohat and Chen Shooting went back to work with agricultural tools on their backs. They didn't even greet Sun Xiangyang, and obviously didn't expect him to be of any help. Quan Dang asked him to stay at home and take care of the children. However, Sun Xiangyang is not idle. If he doesn't want to eat plain rice, let's start by helping his family fetch water. You can also recognize the way by the way and try to see if you can walk out of Shaanxi Bay. Dudu, let's go. Dad will take you to fetch water. Chapter 6. Skilled Water Carrying. You are listening at novel full.audio. Upon hearing Sun Xiangyang's words, Dudu grabbed the glass beads on the ground and quickly got up, his face full of excitement. Normally, Chen shooting doesn't allow her to go out and can only stay at home to play on her own. But now, her father wants to take her out to play, it's not her own request. In this way, Sun Xiangyang walked ahead with 2 empty buckets, and Dudu picked up a branch from somewhere in his hand. He fell and hit it, and followed behind. The picture is full of harmony. Occasionally, I met some villagers on the road, all of whom looked at Sun Xiangyang with a strange gaze. Has the sun set in the west? At first, Sun Xiangyang's family had 2 children, and he was born weak and sickly. In the impression of many people, Sun Xiangyang was just a sickly seedling, hiding at home all year round without showing his face. Have you ever seen him go to the fields to do farm work? Not to mention carrying water. Xiangyang, are you going to fetch water from the mountain ditch? Finally, someone stopped Sun Xiangyang, who was the village's female director. Yes, Aunt 7. Sun Xiangyang stopped and responded. Are you feeling better? You haven't picked water before, so don't try to show off. When your 7th uncle is free, I'll ask him to help carry 2 loads for your family. Chen Xiangqin said naturally. There is actually no blood relationship between the 2 families, but in rural areas, there is always a discussion of seniority. It's okay, my body is much better now than before, and it's time to help my family with some work. Sun Xiangyang self-deprecatingly said. In fact, although the original owner's body and bones were poor in the past, they were not weak enough. In this era, they were born in the countryside but did not do much agricultural work, which is really rare. Alright, you're also old now. Marrying a wife can help support the family, and your mother and daughter-in-law can also relax a bit. However, the road over there is not easy to walk, so be careful. I'll look for the old branch secretary and ask him to cry at the commune. Hurry up and invite the drilling team, so everyone can have water to eat. Chen Xiangqin couldn't help but say. From her words, it was evident that she did not place any hope of finding water on Sun Xiangyang. Grandma Qi, Grandpa Lao Zhishu said that my father can find water. Behind him, Dudu proudly said. Did the old secretary come to see you again? Chen Xiangqin was a bit surprised, but she was also aware of the situation at Sun Xiangyang's house. After a pause, she said, if you really can find water, there's no doubt. Aunt 7 will definitely support you. Now it's different from before. In our Shaanxi Bay, no one can do anything to you. I know, Aunt 7. Sun Xiangyang nodded. Saying goodbye to the other party, Sun Xiangyang led Dudu to continue moving forward. Dudu, in the future, don't casually tell people outside about our family's affairs. Do you understand? I know, my grandmother said Grandma Qi is a good person. Last time she gave me some delicious food, so I told her that if it were a bad person, I wouldn't talk to her. Dudu nodded vigorously, and in his small heart, there was clearly a distinction between good and evil. Sun Xiangyang reminded her, but there was no intention of blaming her. A child of 4 or 5 years old couldn't distinguish so many things. Just now, when she spoke, there was a hint of arrogance both inside and outside her words, clearly feeling that he, as a father, had the ability. As for whether to be a good person or a bad person, is it true to care and appreciate him? He used to be unable to distinguish, but now it's different. Of course, not bringing him any experience does not mean he is a bad person. In these days, we can't even eat enough or wear warm clothes at home. It's good to manage our own family well. How can we have so much kindness? When you are in difficulty, you are already a good person if you don't fall into trouble. Moreover, those who can firmly serve as women's directors are not ordinary people. However, this incident also reminded him to avoid certain things as much as possible in the future, and not to treat Dudu as an air person just because she is small. Not long after, the two of them followed a small path and arrived at the mountain ditch. Because the road was difficult to walk, Sun Xiangyang asked Dudu to wait on it and go down to fetch water on his own. In rural areas, there is no one to hold children. Every household is accustomed to free range. At the age of 4 or 5, they are alone in the village looking for friends to play with. When it comes to food, they often hear some shouting for children. If you're not at ease, follow the adults to work in the field. Even 2 or 3 years older, he is skilled in laundry, cooking, picking up firewood, and taking care of his younger siblings. People living in plains or mountains find it difficult to understand the terrain characteristics of the loess plateau. In short, it means thousands of ravines, crisscrossing. If viewed from a high altitude, it feels like the earth has shattered. So this mountain ditch is not surrounded by steep mountains, but more like a crack in the earth. The saying that there must be a water between two mountains is not suitable here. The reason why there is water here is more because the terrain is low enough, and of course, there is also a water vein below. Otherwise, there are many mountain valleys like this, but not every valley has water, so there won't be a serious water shortage here. Sun Xiangyang filled the water and picked it up with a pole. To be honest, it was a bit awkward. Fortunately, in his previous life in the countryside, he also carried a lot of water. After adapting to it, he finally found a feeling. You have comprehended the skill of carrying water. The sudden prompt appearing in written form in his mind stunned Sun Xiangyang for a moment. Water carrying skills. He couldn't help but summon the panel out, and in the skill column, he indeed saw this skill. Water picking, beginner to practice. Seeing this prompt, Sun Xiangyang was quite happy. It's not that he's happy to learn how to carry water, but this hint indicates that he can become more skilled in things. For example, harvesting wheat, hoeing the field, driving, repairing, and even medical skills, finding martial arts at www.zhaozuiyuan.com. As long as he can study seriously and get started, does it mean that he can continuously improve with experience? In this way, it also strengthens Sun Xiangyang's intention to stay in Shaanxi, because currently only here can he gain enough experience. At present, with the difficulty of drinking water for the entire village, everyone is eager to dig a new well in the village. How much does this earnest expectation need to be transformed into genuine gratitude? Even if there are many white-eyed wolves in the village, it definitely goes far beyond the experience put in. So this deal can be done. Thinking of this, Sun Xiangyang felt his whole body full of strength, carrying water and walking back along the path. Perhaps because someone fell down in the morning, some steps were dug out on the small path here, allowing for a foothold. However, even so, after Sun Xiangyang climbed up, he was still tired and panting heavily, and his legs were soft and fluffy, as if they were no longer his. Even though he gained 10 points of experience and improved his physical fitness a little last night, he is still very weak. This is mainly due to his poor physical condition since childhood, which is a congenital deficiency. After coming up, Sun Xiangyang put down the pole and prepared to rest well, then heard the voice of children not far away. Little broken child, lost star, lost father, lost mother. You're talking nonsense. I have a father, a mother, and a grandmother now. Your current parents are not biological. Your parents have already died, and your current father is still a sick seedling. Maybe one day he will also die, and you are just a little bereaved star. Upon hearing this, Sun Xiangyang's face had become extremely ugly. He walked towards the other side with soft and gentle steps, deep and shallow. Chapter 7. Someone bullies Dudu. You are listening at novel full.audio. On a small mound, there were two older children standing tall, holding small stones and throwing them down. And Dudu stood below, looking a bit embarrassed, but still trying to defend himself, I'm not. You are, my grandmother has already said that she won't let us play with you, so hurry up and get out of here. You're talking nonsense, I'm not a little bereaved star. At this moment, as Sun Xiangyang approached, the two children on the small hill finally discovered him. Not good, the sick and sickly father of little Morning Gate Star has arrived. Run quickly. Two little boys who looked only 8 or 9 years old ran away without saying a word when they saw Sun Xiangyang appear. Although Sun Xiangyang wanted to catch up and beat him hard, he found it difficult to catch up with him in his current state. Children who grew up in rural areas have been chasing chickens and fighting dogs since childhood. They are used to playing around and running around quickly. Moreover, he didn't trust leaving Dudu here alone. Dad, I'm not a little bereaved star. Seeing Sun Xiangyang appear, Dudu's eyes turned red and he couldn't help but shed tears. Of course not, you are Dad's good treasure. Sun Xiangyang pulled Dudu into his arms and looked at the bulging lump on her forehead with tenderness, clearly indicating that it had just been hit by a stone. Does it hurt? No pain. Dudu sobbed while shaking her head. You don't hurt, but Dad feels sorry. You wait, and when you come back, Dad will help you vent your anger. Sun Xiangyang said, his gaze once again turned to the two little boys who had already run away. The two of them saw that he hadn't caught up and slowly stopped, looking arrogantly towards this side. 6 seedlings with no prospects, marrying a wife without laying eggs. You received contempt from villager Qian Dashan, experience +8. You received the disdain from villager Qian Shaoshan, experience +7. Ha! Sun Xiangyang was angry and laughed at. This was the first time he didn't feel happy after gaining experience. After all, no one wants to be pointed at and scolded, especially two little bunnies. At the same time, he also remembered the origins of these two brothers. How can we say that their enemies have narrow paths? These two people have taken over the ancestral cave of his family, the children of the widow's family. It is said that those who are close to red will be red, and those who are close to ink will be black. What kind of family, what kind of children will be raised? The rhymes they make up are naturally deeply remembered because they are constantly repeated by adults. At noon, Zhang Hohat angrily returned home, talking about the old devout woman who spoke ill of his family behind her back, saying that he had offended the king of Jing Dragon. This would be both a young funeral star and a sick seedling, and there would be words that would harm people, such as not laying eggs, which were clearly learned from her. Basically, there will be 1 or 2 shameless old devout women in every village who like to gossip behind the scenes, are greedy for small gains, and distort black and white. It doesn't make sense to reason with this kind of person. The other person's usual trick is to throw tantrums and roll around, shamelessly. The most skilled sentence is, if you have the guts, kill me. In recent years, Zhang Hohat has been throwing tantrums for her grandfather and grandfather, but she has never acted like this for no reason. Only when someone else targets her family, does she stand up and fight back, let alone stir up trouble and fabricate lies behind the scenes. Essentially, Zhang Hohat is still a kind rural woman. But that old devout woman is a complete pest. And just as the other person is best at. If you have the guts, kill me. Sun Xiangyang would definitely not have set himself up for such a pest, but this matter is not over. Even the two little bunnies not far away cannot be counted like this. Ignoring the other party's clamor, Sun Xiangyang led Dudu away. Carrying water, Sun Xiangyang rested several times along the way before carrying it home. As a result, only half of the bucket, which was originally 9% full, remained. Unable to rest, Sun Xiangyang went into the house and searched for it before leading Dudu to the old scholar's house. Compared to his family, the courtyard of the old Secretary of State has a half-person high wall. Standing outside, you can see the old secretary squatting in the courtyard, carefully grinding with a sickle in his hand. Shout, Xiangyang is here. Come and sit down quickly. The old secretary didn't expect Sun Xiangyang to come over, after all, he had just gone to find the other party this morning and had a lot of effort to persuade them to help find water. However, he had to rest for 2 days to recuperate. I didn't expect to come over this afternoon. Could it be that I made a discovery? Old secretary, is your grandson at home? Sun Xiangyang didn't talk nonsense and went straight to the topic. What's going on? Did this little bastard bully Dudu? The old secretary glanced at Sun Xiangyang pulling him, clearly crying, and suddenly became angry. Sun jumped and jumped, "Get out of here for me." The impatient old secretary ignored the issue of seniority and shouted into the room. "Grandpa, what's wrong?" Immediately after, a little boy in his teens ran out of the room, looking puzzled. "Tell me, did you bully Dudu? If I didn't break your leg today, it wouldn't be you." "Grandpa." The old secretary didn't say a word, he wanted to find a stick. "Old branch secretary, there's a misunderstanding. It's not related to jumping. Don't be angry for now." Sun Xiangyang quickly grabbed it before explaining. "Just now, I took Dudu to fetch water and ran into the 2 grandsons of Qian Posi's family. However, these 2 little bunnies cursed Dudu as a little bereaved star and threw stones at her. When they saw me, they were also sick seedlings one by one. At noon, her devout old lady met my mother and kept saying strange things, saying that the reason why the well in our village was taken down was because I had offended the king of the well dragon. If the well collapsed, she would take me back. If I didn't die, there would be no way for the village to draw water. Fuck him." Before Sun Xiangyang could finish speaking, the old secretary became angry. "How much effort did I put into convincing Sun Xiangyang to help find water? For whom? It's not just for the whole village to have water early." As a result, this old devout woman kept dragging her feet. If Sun Xiangyang had let go of the trouble, who would have come to find water? Do you really think drilling a well is easy? Before Sun Xiangyang's father found the well in the village had already dug several wells, each more than 10 meters deep, but there was not a drop of water coming out. Even one of the wells, everyone was still unconvinced. After drilling more than 20 meters at Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com, it was difficult to drill. The water produced was only enough for a few families to drink. What use could it be? Until Sun Xiangyang's father intervened, only about 10 meters of water emerged, providing food for the entire village for more than 10 years, and the water inside continued to flow continuously. Who would have thought, but this well suddenly dried up. It was precisely because he understood how difficult it was to dig a well and find water that the old secretary went to find Sun Xiangyang. Especially after learning that Sun Xiangyang had true abilities and surpassed his father, he became even more passionate and treated him like a precious treasure in the village. Now there is someone bullying the village treasure family. Uncle can tolerate it, and even this old branch secretary cannot tolerate it. Xiangyang, don't worry, I promise to give you a satisfactory explanation about this matter. The old secretary said solemnly. Even he understood that the reason why the old devout woman targeted the Sun Xiangyang family was simply because she was afraid that the other party would take the cave back one day. Now that Sun's father has died again, why not take advantage of this opportunity and quickly throw stones into the well? Old branch secretary, you have spoken too seriously. Whether it's that old devout woman or those 2 little brats, even if they scold me a few times, I'm too lazy to bother. However, you know Dudu's background. No matter how she used to be, she is still my daughter now, and I also take her as my own daughter to raise. Those 2 little bunnies bullied Dudu, I definitely can't let it go, but as a big man, when I come to look for trouble, there will be gossip about bullying widows, hitting children, and the impact will be even worse. So, I would like to invite your family to jump out of the house and beat those 2 little bunnies hard, helping Dudu breathe a sigh of relief. As for excuses. Speaking of which, Sun Xiangyang hesitated for a moment. This matter must not involve Dudu, but it should not make Sun Tayo too hateful. After all, he is helping him and cannot play tricks on children. Chapter 8 Fighting under order. You are listening at novel full.audio. Latest website. Uncle Yang, just say that I saw the two of them peeing in the pond, that's why I took action to teach them a lesson. Without waiting for Sun Xiangyang to give a reason, Sun Xiangyang found it himself. He is familiar with this kind of thing. And he didn't lie either. Before the well in the village was dry, they didn't go there too much to play. They took advantage of a friend drinking water and urinated nearby. But before, now is now. Before, the villagers didn't eat the water in this pond. As for children, it's not a big deal to be mischievous. Now, the whole village, the entire Shaanxi brigade, are hoping that this pond will survive. Are you peeing in it to let everyone taste it? No matter how powerful you are, you have offended the public. It's not easy to use anyone who comes. Upon hearing Sun Xiangyang's reasons, Sun Xiangyang's gaze clearly changed as he looked at him. This child has a round face and big cheeks, a sturdy body, and looks promising at first glance. 1 on 2, more than enough. Then I'll trouble you. Uncle Yang, don't worry, this small matter is up to me. I don't know the mother who beat up Qian Dashan and Qian Shaoshan. Sun Xiangyang was startled by this gaze and immediately slapped his chest with force, reassuring. What are you talking about? At this moment, the old secretary's eyes widened, and the latter immediately shrank his neck. It is said that they are close to each other, but Sun Xiangyang knows that when his grandfather turned against him, he even beat up his father, and then he was beaten up by his father again. It's like making one mistake and getting beaten twice. So there are lingering palpitations in my heart. Xiangyang, this matter. Old branch secretary, if you feel it's inconvenient, then forget it. I'll personally take action. Sun Xiangyang's words immediately made the old secretary anxious. I definitely support this matter. After finishing speaking, the old secretary looked at his grandson and said, just do as Uncle Yang said, but you can't really damage the person. Don't worry, I have a count. Sun jumped and lifted his chin, saying arrogantly. Jump and jump, Uncle can't let you work in vain. There's 50 cents here. Take it and ask 2 more friends for help, just use the reason you just used. If their family asks you for trouble, you'll shout loudly, saying they're cowards and can't afford to lose. If a child fights, if they lose, they'll only know how to find their parents. Sun Xiangyang took out 50 cents from his pocket. He's already making a lot of money. How about not mentioning other production teams for now? Anyway, when their Shaanxi team distributed dividends at the end of last year, their daily value was only 40 cents. The so called daily value refers to the value obtained by a young worker from a day's work, which is calculated based on the annual income. When you are wealthy, the daily value calculated at the end of the year may be 50 cents or 60 cents, but the harvest is not good. At the end of the year, based on the annual income level of the brigade, it may only look like 30 cents or 40 cents. So this daily value is not fixed either. And this daily value, converted into the workload of Qingzhuangli, is 10 work points per day. According to a daily value of 50 cents, that is to say, Sun Xiangyang directly took out 10 work points. Not to mention for a child, even for adults, it is the result of a hard day's labor. Even some women, some young, work with the production team every day, with only 8 or even 6 job positions. Sun Xiangyang looked at the 50 cents in Sun Xiangyang's hand, his eyes clearly lit up. These days, the children in the village don't have the concept of pocket money. They basically pick up their own garbage, and when the salesperson comes to the village with a small car, they will take the garbage they usually save up to exchange for delicious food. If any child has a 5 cent or 10 cents in their hand, they are all objects of envy. Although Sun Xiangyang is the child of an old scholar, it doesn't mean he has pocket money. However, although he was envious, he did not take it and instead looked at the old branch secretary, which he still had some tutoring. Otherwise, it would definitely be another mixed doubles game, and maybe we'll have to add another mother this time, a 3-person mixed doubles game. Grandma did hurt him a little, but she couldn't resist too many enemies. Since it was given by your Uncle Yang, then take it. However, let's first agree that you are not allowed to spend this money alone. The old secretary gave Sun Xiangyang a deep glance before nodding. I know, thank you, Uncle Yang. Just wait and see. After Sun Tayo finished speaking and took the money, he also expressed his gratitude. As expected, Sun Xiangyang received sincere gratitude from Sun Tayo again, this time with 15 points of experience. It can be seen that this little guy is sensible and clever. He can be well trained in the future. Dudu, wait, Brother Jump will go and seek revenge for you now. After speaking, Sun Tiao jumped and started running outside. This is his first time being ordered to fight, and he has a different feeling. After the matter was settled, Sun Xiangyang was also preparing to leave, but he was stopped by the old secretary and asked to wait a moment before entering the room. After a moment, the old secretary walked out carrying a bag. There's a bit of mixed noodles here. Take them home and have your wife cook something delicious for Dudu. Old branch secretary. Just now you gave me the jump money, but I didn't stop it. Now it's me giving it to you. The old secretary waved his hand and said stubbornly. Thank you very much. Sun Xiangyang hesitated for a moment before taking the small half bag of mixed noodles. De here means uncle. As for mixed noodles, it is a type of flour processed by grinding peas and wheat in a half ratio, used to roll noodles, which is absolutely delicious. After weighing the heavy mixed noodles in my hand, it weighed about 10 pounds. Nowadays, when buying white noodles with grain vouchers, based on the level of white noodles, it is basically between 1.8 and 2.2 cents, which is almost unchanged from the 1960s. If calculated based on this, he will undoubtedly make a big profit. However, there are investments from the old branch secretary and compensation for his suffering. The purpose is self-evident. Zhaozuiyuan.com. So Sun Xiangyang did not refuse the other party's kindness. On the way back, Sun Xiangyang held Zamian in one hand and Dudu in the other. Along the way, neither of them spoke. When he returned home, Sun Xiangyang put away the mixed noodles and then said to Dudu, Dudu, don't say anything about today, you know. Also, when your grandmother comes back tonight, let her make hand-rolled noodles for you. Your grandmother's hand-rolled noodles are so delicious. I promise not to say anything. Upon hearing something delicious, Dudu nodded his head vigorously. It's rare that Sun Xiangyang didn't continue to collect wool this time. After the disdain of the two sons of the Qian family and the gratitude of Sun Tayo, Sun Xiangyang has accumulated a total of 65 points of experience. He has tried it, but it is still not enough to find the well, but it is definitely fast. As for the points he added in terms of level, he still only has the previous 10 points. If all the accumulated experience is used to add points, he will be close to upgrading now. Maybe by pulling up 2 more at night, we can be promoted to level 1. But Sun Xiangyang did not do so. Although his body is a bit weak now, he does not work in the production team or fight with people. His daily life is enough. It's better to use these experiences to first find a well, and as long as the water comes out, the experience he currently consumes will be multiplied back several times. At that time, the experience points at hand were abundant, and it was not too late to add more. Especially the attitude of the old secretary towards him made him understand that the earlier this well was dug, the more advantageous it would be. In the evening, when the outside had been blackened, Zhang Hohot came back with chin shooting. It was the opposite of the noon. Zhang Hohot was excited and the whole people felt as if they had eaten ginseng fruit. And she couldn't hide her words at home. When she saw Sun Xiangyang, she started shouting. Latest website. Chapter 9. Anger from Mother. You are listening at novel full.audio. Son, you didn't see it this afternoon. The two precious grandsons of the old lady were beaten up by the young boy from the old scholar with a few children, saying they were urinating in the drinking pond. These two villains, just like the old lady, are truly a family. Her two kids were beaten up. Have you calmed down after eating lunch? Sun Xiangyang asked. It's none of your business to cancel it. Zhang Hohat pursed her lips. Her own son has no ability, but on the contrary, it was someone else's son who vented his anger on her. Although it wasn't the old devout woman who was beaten, her two most cherished grandchildren were her lifelines. Hitting her two grandchildren is more painful than hitting herself. Isn't it revenge? By the way, Mom, the old secretary gave me some miscellaneous noodles this afternoon. Let's have rolling noodles tonight. Sun Xiangyang didn't mean to explain, as long as his anger dissipated. That old guy is here again. He's been on several trips this day. What do you want? Who cares about the miscellaneous noodles he sent? I'll return them later. Upon hearing this, Zhang Hohat's first reaction was not joy, but complaint. She knows the other party's idea without asking, and she must be looking for her own son to find water. She didn't have to stop her son from seeking water, the key issue was that his son didn't have this ability, and in the end, it was easy to make things worse and offend people. It was better to refuse completely from the beginning. Let's just forget it, the old secretary is stubborn, but I also gave him 50 cents, which can be considered a purchase. Sun Xiangyang found a reason to settle the account of that 50 cents. I gave you the money, then I won't repay it. Dudu, wait. Grandma will wash her hands and make you hand-rolled noodles. Upon hearing the money, Zhang Hohat didn't say anything. You can't come to your door and get the money back, can you? Moreover, with only 50 cents of miscellaneous noodles, it's probably not much. When Zhang Hohat entered the room, Chen Shooting pulled Dudu to her side and looked at her forehead. Mom, I accidentally knocked on it this afternoon, it doesn't hurt. Dudu felt guilty when she was seen, but she remembered what her father had told her before to keep it a secret, so she made up an excuse. But how could her little tricks possibly deceive Chen Shooting? Feeling the cold gaze shooting towards him, Sun Xiangyang hesitated for a moment before choosing to tell the truth. In the afternoon, I led Dudu to fetch water and encountered the two little bunnies from Qian Posi's house. Dudu wanted to go and play, but was hit by the other party throwing stones. As soon as Sun Xiangyang mentioned this, Chen Shooting stood up directly, her face already covered in frost. Judging from her demeanor, it is obvious that she is going to find the other party to settle accounts. Seeing this, Sun Xiangyang quickly grabbed her. Don't worry, I'll go to the old scholar's house when I come back this afternoon. I'll find his grandson, Sun Tayo, and beat up those two little bunnies hard to vent my anger on Dudu. If you're still not satisfied, I'll personally take action later. Mom, Brother Jump said he will help me seek revenge. Dudu also spoke on the side. It's just that the little brain still hasn't turned a corner. Why did her father tell her to keep it a secret even though he had told her that no one could say it? So much so that she could only fabricate lies just now. To be honest with my mother, is it really like this? Chen Shooting took a deep breath, squatted down again, and earnestly looked at Dudu, asking. Well, really, I want to go there to play, but they won't let me. They called me a little bereaved star and killed my parents. They even called my current father a sick seedling and said you can't lay eggs. When I came back, my father took me to the old branch secretary's grandfather's house and gave Brother Jump 5 cents to avenge me. This time, Dudu answered honestly. Good Sun Xiangyang, you're lying to me. I was curious just now. Even if the old secretary gave me some miscellaneous noodles, how could he still charge me? You've started playing with me, haven't you? Just then, a cold voice came from behind. Sun Xiangyang turned around and saw Zhang Hohat holding a rolling pin in her hand, watching him intently. You received the anger of villager Zhang Hohat, experience plus 20. Oh. Full 20 experience, this is a Daifengshu, salad of assorted fresh vegetables. However, this also indicates to what extent Zhang Hohat is angry at this moment. The rolling pin was clearly not meant to scare him, it was really about to be smashed down. Sun Xiangyang ran away without saying a word. This is called a hero not taking immediate losses. After wandering around outside, Sun Xiangyang estimated that the anger at home should have dissipated. He only then took a deep and shallow step back home. Just as I opened the door, I smelled a fragrant smell. Looking at the table again, Dudu was burying his head and pulling his hand to roll out noodles from the bowl. And Zhang Hohat and Chen Shooting were also eating, without any intention of waiting for him. Dudu, is grandma's hand-rolled noodles delicious? Sun Xiangyang didn't hesitate and sat down beside him, asking gently. Delicious. Dudu has a bulging mouth and even sprays a little while speaking. Eat your food well, don't pay attention to your unremarkable father. Zhang Hohat's anger was clearly lingering. Chen Shooting stood up and went to serve Sun Xiangyang a large bowl of hand-rolled noodles, and even poured some braised rice. Mom, don't be angry. Dudu is my daughter and she has suffered a loss. As a father, I definitely can't just let it go, but those two little brats are running fast. I just picked up water and couldn't catch up. Besides, if I take action to teach them a lesson, it will be useless if it's light, but if it's heavy, I will be gossiped about by the villagers, saying that as a big person, I only know how to bully children. How bad is my reputation? And that old devout woman has always had a grudge against our family. By using the pretext, why don't she come to our house and cause trouble? Sun Xiangyang then explained softly. She'll come as soon as she comes. Your mother, I'm still afraid she won't succeed. Upon hearing this, Zhang Hohat threw her chopsticks and glared directly at Sun Xiangyang. Yes, you are definitely not afraid of her, but because of this small matter, it has stirred up our house and is not worth it. Even if we have to deal with her, there will be many ways in the future. You just need to wait and see. Sun Xiangyang said seriously. Okay, now that you're older and your wings are hard, I can't say anything about you, but her family's bullying of Dudu can't just be left at that. After Zhang Hohat finished speaking, she ignored Sun Xiangyang and left straight away. Judging from the way she left, there was no intention of immediately going to the other party to settle accounts. After all, Sun Tayo had just beaten someone during the day. If she were to come back and visit Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com again, some might think that Sun Tayo was instructed by her son. As for whether the old devout woman would guess, she didn't care at all. Anyway, there's no evidence. But she still cares to some extent about the thoughts of others. What about you? Are you still angry? As Zhang Hohat left, Sun Xiangyang couldn't help but look at his own daughter.in.law. Previously, upon hearing that Dudu had been beaten, he clearly felt that Chen Shooting was holding back a wave of anger, but unfortunately, she did not attack him, so he did not gain any experience. On the contrary, it was Zhang Hohat who directly dealt a critical strike. So Sun Xiangyang is a bit confused. Can you become your own daughter.in.law and not be angry with him? There's nothing to be angry about, it's normal for children to play and fuss. Chen Shooting's faint answer. But Sun Xiangyang could hear that her words were insincere. If Chen Shooting didn't feel sorry for Dudu, she wouldn't have had to marry him and treat him as her own. But as Sun Xiangyang just said, even if she goes to help Dudu find a place, she cannot hit the other party's child and can only argue with adults. The problem is, the other party's family is not reasonable at all. On the contrary, Sun Xiangyang's method is more useful. Thinking of this, Chen Shooting looked at Sun Xiangyang's gaze and became somewhat strange. Since the other party came to life this time, everything they did, even looking at her, seemed like a different person. Is it because I almost died that my personality changed drastically? As for why she didn't get angry with Sun Xiangyang and got married for 6 months, she wouldn't know what her own man looked like. Got used to it. There is no hope for such a thing, so naturally there is no mention of being angry. Chapter 10. Accepting Apprentices. Just be prepared for the rain. You are listening at novel full.audio. At night, before going to bed, Sun Xiangyang once again let go of the old man's pride and gave everyone in the family foot wash. Zhang Hohat glared at him in anger. Your mother and I are not old enough to move, you old man, don't do these things in the future. Zero gains. I'll do it myself in the future. Dudu can't get used to it, let her go outside and wash her feet on her own. Shooting hesitated for a moment and said politely. She always felt that Sun Xiangyang was being indifferent and attentive. Zero gains. Dudu, who had a plump belly and was lazily lying there, thanked his father, but it was clearly a bit perfunctory. She didn't want to move at all, let alone wash her feet now. The harvest is also zero. Sun Xiangyang can only extinguish his achievement of reaching 100 experience points tonight. Adding the 20 points of anger from his mother, he has now accumulated 85 points of experience, which is very close. The next morning, Sun Xiangyang went to fetch water again, but this time he didn't bring Dudu with him. Although my shoulders still hurt a bit, I have to adapt slowly and exercise more, which also belongs to exercising the body. Because I rushed early, I met many people who went to fetch water on the way. 9 out of 10 were women, and when I saw him, I looked at him with a surprised look. Some people stopped and asked about the village well, and complained that the 2 sons of the Qian family were not the same person. They urinated in the water pond and deserved to be beaten. It goes without saying which of the 2 mischievous and annoying sons of the Qian family, the grandson of the old secretary, is more persuasive. From beginning to end, there was no doubt that Sun Tayo was instructed by Sun Xiangyang. This is caused by inherent impressions. Perhaps due to his water-carrying skills, Sun Xiangyang's performance on this trip home, although still tired and panting, was slightly better than yesterday, with only 60% of the water remaining in the bucket. Upon returning home, Zhang Hohat looked at him up and down, somewhat suspecting that Shooting had drugged him. What virtues did she not know about her son's past? Thinking about how I used to say so much without any use, but only half a year after marrying my wife, I began to obey her and take on the responsibilities of the family, which made my heart ache. Bai Yang. You're weak, I'll go fetch water from now on. Shooting saw the water in the bucket shaking hard and couldn't even shake it out. Coupled with her mother-in-law's uncomfortable gaze just now, she would rather go fetch the water than herself. It's okay, let's just exercise. I can't always stay at home and eat plain rice from now on. Sun Xiangyang shook his head. On his way back, he clearly felt that he had become more proficient in carrying water. He estimated that in another 10.5 days, his water-carrying skills would be promoted. He wanted to try this skill and see how it felt to advance. Can we explore more skills for him to use in the future? Seeing Sun Xiangyang say so, Shooting didn't persuade him anymore. Anyway, she didn't think Sun Xiangyang could hold on for a few days, just 3 minutes of enthusiasm, which just allowed him to experience the difficulties of others. When they went to work in the production team, there were only Sun Xiangyang and Dudu left at home. After wandering around the house, Sun Xiangyang retrieved the dragon searching ruler and held it flat, circling around the yard one after another. He wants to give it a try. Can he also make this thing skilled? That way, you may not need to expend experience to find the well. But after trying countless times, I still didn't get any hint, so I waited for Sun Tayo. Uncle Yang, I found 4 people yesterday and beat up Qian Dashan and Qian Shaoshan hard, breaking their noses. As soon as Sun Tayo arrived, he invited credit. For him, this was a rare experience. In the past, if he fought outside, he would still bully the little with more, and when he returned home, he would inevitably be beaten. Only this time, not only did he not get beaten up, but he also earned a penny, making his reputation among his friends rise. After all, other friends also have money to take it. Didn't you reveal your mouth, did you? Sun Xiangyang casually asked. No, I'm keeping my mouth shut, not even my mother. Sun Taotao's resolute answer. By the way, Uncle Yang, it seems that Qian Dashan and Qian Shaoshan are a bit dissatisfied. How about I go beat him up again? Are you addicted to fighting? Do you want me to tell your grandfather? Sun Xiangyang glared at this guy in anger. If it weren't for venting his anger on Dudu yesterday, he wouldn't have hired Sun Taotao to help. But under normal circumstances, he doesn't need to be angry with the two children. Don't. As soon as Sun Xiangyang heard that he was going to tell his grandfather, Sun Taotao was awake.Up call. Yesterday, it was just because Sun Xiangyang went to his house, otherwise he wouldn't have had the chance to fight as ordered. Although everyone used to say that Sun Xiangyang was a sick seedling, Sun Taotao finally understood. Uncle Yang made it clear that he was a real person who didn't show up, otherwise his grandfather wouldn't have agreed yesterday. And when he just came over, Uncle Yang was still practicing with a treasure in his hand. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but take 2 more glances. If this thing is taken out to fight, it should be quite imposing, right? Want to play? Sun Xiangyang saw Sun Taotao's gaze constantly aiming towards the Dragon Seeker's ruler and asked a question. Thank you, Uncle Yang. Sun Taotao immediately hit the snake with the stick. How else can we say that this child is promising? Knowing how to advance and retreat, having a keen eye, the key is having a thick skin. It seems that the old secretary is also considered a successor. Don't think about good things. This thing was sent by your grandfather to search for water. If you take it to play, do you believe your grandfather told you not to come to the Kong for half a month? Although Sun Xiangyang doesn't care about this thing, he still has to use it as a cover-up, so naturally it's impossible for Sun Taotao to play with it. Moreover, on the side of the old secretary, they are all getting anxious now. If one discovers that the dragon hunting ruler he sent to Sun Xiangyang to search for water has been taken by his grandson to play with, the consequences will not be as simple as fighting with someone. Can this thing be used to find water? Upon hearing that it was sent by his grandfather, Sun Taotao dared not make any more decisions, but he couldn't help but be curious. Of course, this is the dragon-seeking ruler, a feng shui master's magical tool. Do you want to learn it? Sun Xiangyang's heart suddenly moved. Master. Without saying a word, Sun Taotao pounced and knelt in front of Sun Xiangyang, with a slightly chubby face full of longing. He doesn't understand whether it's a dragon ruler or a magic tool. But he knew that his grandfather valued Sun Xiangyang very much now, and he had also said at home that the well that had been taken down in the village was the one Sun Xiangyang's father had found before, and now he is counting on Sun Xiangyang to find another well. Why don't you hold on to such a thick leg tightly? You received the worship of the villager Sun Taotao, experience +10. Don't rush to call me master, I haven't decided yet to take you as my disciple. Sun Xiangyang shook his head. He did this not only on a whim, but also by thinking that the old secretary had a deep belief in him as a feng shui master. With the help of the system, Sun Xiangyang asked himself if he could play this role well and not be doubted in the future. But at the moment, there are still some concerns. But if we also drag the precious grandson of the old secretary onto this ship, we won't worry about no one blocking him in the future. The approach may be somewhat shameless, but the victory lies in safety. Don't be fooled by the fact that the old secretary is already quite old and doesn't seem to have many good years to live. However, if we underestimate him and don't take him seriously because of this, it is definitely a big mistake. Nowadays, the captain of the Shuangchuan production team, Zhaozhuyuan.com, is his own nephew. The Sun surname is also the largest surname in Shuangchuan. It goes without saying what this represents. Sun Xiangyang suspected that his father had sent things to the old secretary before and deliberately said something. What happened to be seen by the other party reporting his family's wandering around the ancestral grave was just a play. Even the person who reported his father died of illness 6 months later, there is something suspicious. However, as of now, Sun Xiangyang does not intend to investigate the truth of the past. It's gone, it's gone. Moreover, Sun's father only did this to better protect his family. If Sun Xiangyang wants to take root in Shaanxi, the old support secretary is essential. Another thing is that the game system has anchored Shaanxi, which seems to have some profound meaning that needs to be explored step by step. There are also places where we need to rely on the old branch secretary. However, the prerequisite for all of this is that he can first help the village find a well with water supply before discussing the rest of the matter. So accepting Sun Xiangyang as an apprentice is not in a hurry. Later on, he will have to ask the opinions of the old branch secretary. This is a matter of mutual preference, and we cannot force buying or selling. Master, I understand. Do we need to test first? Sun jumped with a skilled appearance. A few years ago, the old secretary's family collected some comic books. Although some were burned, some accidentally fell off. Sun Xiangyang had read a comic book called Journey to the West. Inside, Sun Wukong apprenticed and had to go through numerous tests before finally learning the 70.2 transformations. Yes, I'll give you the first test now, take Dudu out to play. Master, don't worry, I will definitely protect Sister Dudu.